Good morning, everybody. Those of you I don't know, my name is Mike Ritchie. I'm the Managing Director of MRA Consulting. I'm your facilitator for today. We have four very eminent people to speak about turning textile waste into an opportunity. Australia generates about 1 million tonnes of textile waste every year, and we landfill almost all of it. It is a significant challenge, and it's, for those of you who saw some of the presentations yesterday, it, along with plastics, is one of the recalcitrant streams that we have been singularly unsuccessful in recovering and driving out of landfill, in spite of many efforts by many governments over many years. Only about 3% of Australia's home rubbish streams are recycled. We have a number of textiles. We have a number of trials going on. Obviously, many of you are aware of the bin arrangements that the charities use. A number of charities now are looking at setting up decommissioning and reprocessing facilities for textiles, but it's very early days. We have a presentation today about Seamless, that is an extended producer responsibility scheme that's looking at, again, how to capture and recover textiles. We have a number of innovators in the market, including BlockTex, eThread, Seamless, who are all trying to progress this agenda, but it is a very steep mountain to climb. As I say, about 1 million tonnes being generated and almost all of it being landfilled. We will be using Slido, I think, organisers, for the questions, so please open up your apps. And for those of you who don't know with Slido, when you click on a question, it's in support of a question, it ranks it further up, so it's not just first in, best dressed. I'll be calling on the questions that get the most interest from yourselves, so please vote on the questions. And we have bags of time for questions going forward, and if we run out of questions, I have a number of Dorothy Dixes to put to people. So they're going to hear from each of them for about 5-8 minutes, and then we'll launch and open up to the floor and give you all a chance to ask your questions either via Slido, or if that runs out, we might grab a microphone and try and do it the good old-fashioned way as well. All right, our first speaker is Ainsley Simpson. She's the Chief Executive Officer of Seamless. Then we'll have Fiona Glenn, General Manager of the Sebastian Foundation. Minette Anthonyons, from Senior Project Officer of Organics for New South Wales Environment Protection Agency. And finally, Chura Bank, who is a partner of eThread, one of these new startup companies trying to do innovative things around textiles. So without further ado, Ainsley, do you want to kind of give us the general view of the world and how you see the world and where you're going?
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, everyone. I will acknowledge that today we're on traditional lands and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Now, I'm sure that 100% of the room are familiar with product stewardship, but you may not be 100% familiar with Seamless, which is the clothing product stewardship scheme for Australia. We are the world's first circular product stewardship scheme, and that might surprise you, but the majority of EPRs do tend to focus end of life. When you think about clothing, textiles, 80% of the problem that we are creating is actually baked in right at the beginning. Not dissimilar from infrastructure, where I spent the majority of my career. So what makes Seamless different is that we are targeting 4 strategic priority areas. Circular design, so making sure that product that is coming into the market has actually got clear properties, and in our instance, we're looking at renewable, recyclable, safe, and increasingly traceable clothing product. We also consider circular business models, so what's happening in the system and how can we look at things that are at the core of some of the challenge that we are trying to deal with. We do have an overproduction problem. We do have an overconsumption problem. So by looking whole of life, we're starting with the end in mind and making sure that product that's entering the system is appropriate, that it stays in the system for the longest possible time. And then we are obviously looking at closing the loop and importantly, citizen behaviour change. So those are our 4 strategic priorities. We commenced operations on the 1st of July, so just about 10 months ago. We've got 55 brands on board as members, and many of them you will be familiar with. There are organisations, and I'm looking at the diversity in the room, there are organisations like R.M. Williams, Lorna Jane, the Suzanne Group. We've also got the iconic, we've got MJ Bale, Country Road. I'm almost certain that you would be familiar with some of those organisations, and my first call to action is when you purchase with purpose and shop seamless if you're going to shop. But there are many options rather than purchasing new. There is also much joy in having something that is new to you, like much of what I'm wearing today. When we started Seamless on the 1st of July with our 55 brands, we also welcomed the supply chain, the full value chain, upstream and downstream, to join us on what is going to be quite a significant journey to 2030 if we are going to reach a clothing circular economy. So we also have about over 110 organisations from across the supply chain, and many of you are in the room or on the panel. And it's important because this particular challenge is not going to be solved by any single organisation alone. In Australia, we import 97% of our clothing. We import 1.4 million units of clothing a year, and we consume 1.42 million units of, we actually purchase 1.42 billion units of clothing, which, if you divide by the total Australian population, is about 53 new items of clothing a year. Almost one a week, just over, which is, in my opinion, but almost everyone else that I speak to, and particularly in rooms like this, that's more than what we need. So I think the adage of take what you need probably rings true when you think about our clothing consumption. But when you compare that globally, we're second only to the US. So that's not particularly a ladder that I think that we should be aiming to climb and be at the tippy top of. Having said that, we do then move an extraordinary volume of clothing through the system, and we are becoming increasingly better at keeping clothing at its highest use. The secondary market is actually growing faster than the new retail market, and for the first time, Australians are actually purchasing more and more pre-loved garments every year. On average, about 9 pre-loved items are entering our wardrobes every year, which is great progress. But we are not necessarily recycling at the rate that we could. You heard this morning, and I think Ron really brought it to life, we don't have many established end markets, and textile to textiles recycling technologies they are here, they are starting to scale, but we need to make sure that we've got really strong end markets to support the kind of output that we will over time generate. We need to make sure that that product then actually reaches those markets, and the very brands that are placing product on the market are then actually encouraged, rewarded, and begin to agree to those offtake agreements so that there is a system that can commercially, viably sustain itself. In terms of our citizen behaviour change campaigns, those will come over time, but right now, where our priorities have been for this first year of establishment has been around membership and ensuring we get the uptake that we need to build a sustainable system. The second thing has been about metrics. We need to baseline where we are if we're going to measure progress and communicate transparently about what we're actually able to achieve together. And then the third has been around participation and things like standing up our state and territory government roundtable, where we have every state and territory government represented to talk about policy and programs and the kind of infrastructure investment that we might need going forward is really important, because textiles is at its infancy. We've been trying for some time, but Seamless has only been around for a very short while. And there's lots of work to do, but Seamless is for everyone, because every single one of you in this room wears clothes, which I thank you for. But Seamless is for everyone, and every single part of the supply chain, every single human being is touched by this, and we can all do something better so that we can prioritise nature and choose, enjoy and recycle more responsibly.
Okay, we'll turn now to Fiona Glenn, GM of the Sebastian Foundation. Thanks, Fiona.
Thank you, Mike. I think I might hand to Turab if that's okay, because I think
Turab
our
wants to go
involvement,
next.
if that's okay, I think our involvement makes much more sense once you've heard.
Very happy for
E-Thread.
Turab to go first.
Thank
Turab
you.
is the partner of E-Thread, and quick declaration, MRA Consulting's done a little bit of work for E-Thread to help them enter the market.
Thank you, Mike. So you've expertly explained the textile problem in Australia, which I thank you for. So as you know, we're a startup company called E-Thread, and I'll just walk you through our services, because what I'd like to do is just highlight how a company like ours can be part of a practical, innovative and sustainable solution towards turning textile waste into value. So the first that we provide is our clothing bin networks. We operate a growing network of strategically placed clothing bins in partnership with household names that you'd know, like Woolworths, Ampold, Chemist Warehouse, as well as in councils like Campbelltown, Sutherland Shire and Tweed Shire. These aren't just clothing bins or clothing hubs, they're a doorway to action for the public. We ensure the clothing bins are placed in high traffic public areas, retail sites, schools and the like, that make it easy for everyday Australians to dispose of their clothing responsibly. What differentiates us and our service is basically our service delivery, our maintenance of the sites, collection frequency, and transparent reporting. We've employed strategies with success to prevent illegal dumping while ensuring clean, reliable donating channels are available for the public. I've got a background in investment management. When I looked to transfer my career into this industry, our company basically looked at all the pain points that this industry has had in the last 20 years, and we sought to address them. We report on every single kilogram collected from every bin with photographic evidence, providing our stakeholders with granular information on how many kilos they've diverted from landfill, how this has contributed to savings in carbon. Yeah, it's working. Water and electricity savings that come with it, and how such proceeds, how the proceeds of it's basically contribute towards.
Give it a bash on your leg and I'll go and try and get another one. Oh, okay, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, and basically how the donations from these services contribute towards Australian students from accessing the Open Parachute program run by the Sebastian Foundation, which my colleague to my right of me, Fiona, will discuss later. This is why it makes a bit more sense if I go first. The second service that we provide is taking care of excess stock. We partner with a lot of charities to help them manage their excess donations, whilst also working with the retail industry for their excess stock. Instead of sending excess clothing to landfill or offloading our waste problem internationally, we sort, redistribute and repurpose every piece here in Australia. The third service that we provide is our clothing drives and community event days. We collaborate with local charities, councils and organisations to facilitate community clothing drives. From the Red Cross National Drive to the drop-off days that we have with councils. Our team manages everything from their reporting, logistics, and sorting. It's about making large-scale participation easy, efficient, and impactful, along with educational campaigns to highlight how their donations are making a positive difference to our environment. The last service that we provide is curbside or door-to-door pickups. For those who can't make it to a bin or an event day, we've created an on-demand curbside pickup service that brings textile collections straight to your doorstep, whether you're an individual, school, or business. We've spent actually quite a bit of money on developing an application that can work independently or with councils to cater for such a service. Again, with photographic evidence of everything that we do along with ESG data. Whilst each of these services play a role in of themselves, when we talk to councils, we recommend that combining these above services has the greatest impact in terms of textile collection, as it caters for the dynamics of the public and their donation behaviours. So the question that we get asked is, well, what happens to all these textiles, right? We currently get, we're averaging about 250,000 kilos of textile donations every single week. That's a lot of textiles. So once the clothing ends up at our sorting facilities, the journey here has only begun for us. At our sorting facilities, textiles are categorized by condition, material, and reusability. We take one of three steps: reuse, repurpose, or recycle. We are committed, extremely committed, to sending nothing to landfill. A true closed-the-loop solution, collecting Australia's textile waste, accounting for it, reusing it, repurposing it, or recycling it here within Australia. With reuse, we're trying to extend the life of the item and reduce waste. Good quality items, which makes up at the moment, surprisingly, 30 to 40% of what gets donated. It's unbelievable, the quality that's actually donated in these bins. They get sold in local and international markets. And when I say international markets, you know, your ears should pin up. So what is sold internationally by us is only a grade A product, and mainly to the Pacific Islands. We are trying to ensure that we do not export Australia's waste problem to other developing nations. Rather, we provide access of grade A only quality products at substantially lower pricing for these communities. What is sold domestically is distributed through online platforms, resellers, and thrift stores. Coming soon, as Ainsley said, second-hand clothing is becoming really popular. We are excited to be launching what we believe will be Australia's largest second-hand clothing fashion online retailer. And this initiative is to transform how Australians engage with pre-loved clothing. All reuse processing is done right here in Australia, which means no offshore dumping, no exploitation, no child labour, no modern slavery practices. All the accountability is done here within Australia. That is our aim and mission. With repurposing, if an item can't be worn again, we give it a new life by transforming it to either cleaning rags or filler materials. With cleaning rags, we convert unwearable clothing into high-demand cleaning rags in the mining and automotive sectors. Australia, per capita, is the largest importer of cleaning rags in the world due to the mining industry. It is also, as Ainsley was alluding to, per capita, the largest consumer of textiles in the world. Our clients include Eagers Automotive, which we've got a nationwide contract with, and Western Australian mines that are in the Pilbara. Recycling. This is my pet baby, right? This is why I transformed my industries from investment management to waste. We're investing heavily in cutting-edge textile recycling right here in Australia. We've recently established research partnerships with Western Sydney University and Deakin University, who are helping us build new ways to transform old fabrics into locally made products, particularly aiming towards the construction industry. We're protecting this innovation through IP management, whilst also seeking private equity funding and government support to truly build a circular economy where Australia's waste is not exported, but retained, recycled, reinvested, and manufactured into products in Australia for Australia. At eThread, we're committed to transparency and accountability. We're proud to back all our work with ESG reporting. Every single kilogram of clothing collected is tracked in real time through our custom-built app. We've spent a lot of money on these apps. What does this data tell us? That we've reduced carbon emissions, we've saved millions of litres of water, reduced energy consumption across the supply chain, and preserved raw materials, reducing the strain on natural ecosystems. This isn't just theory. It's actually measurable, tangible impact. And we report it openly because transparency builds trust, and trust drives progress. Our vision is zero waste. Every step of our delivery chain is about closing the loop. And with our partnership with the Sebastian Foundation, which Fiona will go through soon, it's also about building stronger communities. For eThread, textile waste is not a problem, it's actually an opportunity. It's an opportunity to fight climate change, to create local jobs, support charity and social enterprise, and build a cleaner, more circular economy for our future generations. We really are very genuine about this. Whilst we are proud of our work, as said before, in creating purposeful change, we cannot do this alone. We invite you all to join us as partners, donors, collaborators, and change makers. Thank you for your time.
Fiona Glenn, Sebastian Foundation.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thanks, Turab. Hi, everyone. I'm Fiona Glenn. I'm from the Sebastian Foundation. That's the charity formed by Guy Sebastian and his wife, Jules. And I come in at the community impact side of this circular discussion. Our charity focuses on youth mental health. I'm sure many, if not all of you in this room, have been touched by mental health in some way or another, whether it's friend or family struggling at the moment, or someone who has sadly lost their struggles. We all hear of those awful stories of kids or teenagers who have got to absolute breaking point and have chosen to take their own life. It feels like it's happening more and more often, and sadly, that's correct, it actually is. The stats are pretty terrifying. Suicide is actually the leading cause of death of young Australians at the moment, so kids between 15 and 24. Those deaths make up actually a third of deaths of that age group. 2 in 5 kids these days have confirmed mental health issues, and that's actually increased by 50% over the last 50 years. So it is tragic. Sorry to put a dampener on it, but it's a real issue, and I think we just can't sit back and accept that, and something needs to be done. So there are lots of charities, or some good services out there who are really supporting people at that critical end, and they're doing a wonderful job. So we wanted to fill a gap, and we fund work that gets in at the early prevention level, and through the support of eThread and the process that we work with here, donations from all of eThread's, every single bin that's out there, all of the other collection services, proceeds from rags is donated to the Sebastian Foundation, so we can then invest in local schools in those same local communities to do a wonderful in-school mental health program that we've found called Open Parachute, and that teaches kids the mental skills they need to get through life's challenges. We kind of figure, kids are being taught maths, science, geography, but why are we not taught how to deal with life and to cope with all the emotional side of things and all the challenges that they will no doubt face, so that they don't get to that overwhelming point. So Open Parachute is a really unique program in a number of ways, and there's a lot of reasons why it actually works. It's developed by a clinical psychologist called Dr. Hayley Watson. So she has worked in clinical settings with kids and teenagers, and she's also studied her PhD in bullying intervention, so there's real science behind it. It's not just a token one-off topic. It's tailored from kindergarten right through to year 12, with age-appropriate content for those kids. It's done in the classroom and focused on peer-to-peer learning. So the kids actually sit in the classroom and watch a real story of a child their own age in Australia talking about whatever the topic is that week of their own real experience. So it covers all issues from social media to peer pressure, bullying, body image, grief, anxiety, addiction for the older ages. And once the kids have watched that story, they then do activities and exercises together as a class or in groups to embed the learnings they're meant to take away from that. So importantly with that, those learnings are the activities are all preloaded from Open Parachute, so it's very simple for the teachers to run. It's actually the teacher is the facilitator rather than being expected to be the mental health expert, and that's what we're hearing a lot of. I think that there is a lot of demands on teachers to fill that space, but they're not trained to do that, they're trained to be teachers. So there are extra resources for the teachers to actually upskill in the mental health side of things and to help support their students. There are resources there for the parents as well to support the kids back at home, so it really is kind of an all-round program. It's scalable because it's run online. We don't need to rely on sending facilitators out to the school. It's all based online. We just this week start implementing a tiny remote community school in the Pilbara region, and just hearing the reasons why they need the program was just kind of quite heartwarming. And it's actually, I think the great thing about this program, and I've got kids myself and I've sometimes seen that the school might have a one-off session one term on social media, which is great, that all helps, and then maybe term 2 they'll get another supplier in on another topic, possibly bullying, and that's dealt with in a slightly different way. But what we're hearing is because this program is run all year round, there are enough lessons for every year group to run weekly lessons if they choose to, or some might do fortnightly or monthly. But the fact that these lessons are run in a consistent way all year round means that the teachers are actually seeing real behaviour change in the kids, and they're reporting that, which is great. And I think the thing I love about this model is that it's run in local communities. So we're really kind of working towards real sustainable change with this. We're investing in the youth to improve their outcomes for the future. The fact that we have, it's in local schools, so there's a huge opportunity for community support and participation in the program to just keep that chain going. And also, I think the fact that we have the touch points in schools means you've got extra opportunity there to educate the kids on the importance of recycling and sustainable change. So I think there's so much opportunity here. We're kind of just touching the surface, and there's so much more to do. But thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. Our last opening comment from Minette Antions, Senior Project Officer, EPA.
Good morning, everyone. I'd first like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we are gathering on today and their continuing connection to this land, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal people who are here today. So this is my first time attending COFs. Amanda Kane, who I'm sure many of you know here, she told me this was the best place to come and talk about waste with people who work in waste, and so far I'd have to agree with her. So I have the privilege of working in the organics team. That's my day job, which is part of the wider Programmes and Innovation Division at New South Wales EPA. So a small caveat, any detailed policy or regs questions I might have to take on notice. And although I'm representing New South Wales EPA, I also will and can talk from a personal perspective of working within the textile industry for, I hate to admit it, 20 years. I've had boots on the ground in upstream and downstream's global supply chain, global textile supply chains. So that does definitely give you a perspective on clothes and other textile products. With organics, although it has its challenges, it is at its core a circular system. We're able to source separate, we have the technologies to produce compost and other products, which can be returned to the soil to increase nutrients, and we're diverting from landfill and reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. Also, from my perspective, the supply chains are nice and short and relatively local, so I can sleep well at night. In contrast, textiles, although there are definitely pockets of circularity, which we've heard about today already, it's still very much in its linear system era, for all you Taylor Swift fans out there. It's take, make, underuse, and discard. So before I go any further, as this is a crowd I haven't met before, I'd just like to ask a few questions. So, all easy. Can you raise your hand if you have had a new to you item of clothing enter your wardrobe this year? So it can be new or it can be pre-loved. So pretty much 80%, I'd say, of the crowd. Keep your hand raised if that item was pre-loved. Okay, that's good, more than some crowds, maybe due to we're all working in the waste industry. Raise your hand if you have an item of clothing in your wardrobe that you've not worn in the last 2 years. Okay, pretty much everyone here. And who has repaired or had repaired an item of clothing this year? Okay, that's good. It's better than most crowds, so I'm with you on that. So we all love to buy new clothing. We don't use our clothing long enough, and outside of this cohort, we don't really think about what happens to our clothing when we discard or donate them. At the moment, I'm going to make a bold statement. The only sustainable textile item is the ones that you already have in your wardrobe, in your linen cupboard, in your house, and that you actively use. There's quite a lot of clothing that's sitting there, as we've demonstrated, in wardrobes unused. Textile products, incredibly varied product group, produced in really complicated global supply chains with a lack of transparency. They use lots of resources, energy, water, raw materials, very high risk of modern slavery. We have an oversupply, a lack of scaled fibre-to-fibre reprocessing technology, and globally the textiles industry contributes between 6 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So it's not really a great picture. So New South Wales EPA, we acknowledge that textiles is a problem waste stream and the issues are growing. We know from the New South Wales thread count report and the CNI waste audit that we landfill close to 330,000 tonnes of textiles each year. For us at the EPA, our targets in textiles are kind of incorporated at the moment into our organics targets and also our broader waste reduction targets. We don't, at the moment, have a specific textile policy, strategy, program or funding, so there's a lot of work still to be done by us as an organisation. We are laying the groundwork. One of that is establishing partnership with Seamless during its setup period, and have continued that as it's become operational, and that's been a really useful partnership for us. Really give us that relationship to what's going on in the industry, and also, as Ainsley touched upon, the government interjurisdictional meeting and roundtables have been well attended by all the states and have been very useful to understand and get synergy around what's happening in the textile waste stream. We've been able to get learnings from projects and also talk about replicating projects as well with those learnings so that we can leapfrog the data collection that we get. Last year, the EPA also funded charitable reuse to deliver the New South Wales reuse study and reuse calculator. And the study looked at the economic, environmental and social impact of the reuse sector, which is fabulous because actually looking at the 360 view gives a really whole picture. It showed that 107 million second-hand items were reused in New South Wales. Almost 90 million of those were clothing and other textiles. There was a saving of 340,000 tonnes of CO2, diverted almost 50,000 tonnes of products from landfill, and also supported over 1,500 full-time equivalents in jobs. And a percentage of that, 23%, were actually people who are facing long-term barriers to employment. It also demonstrated that we export a lot of our donated goods, and there's a decline in the quality of donations. And on this iteration of the study, the online marketplaces didn't participate. So that's, I think, for future iterations of the study, that is an important cohort that we need to understand their impact. The calculator is proving to be an excellent tool for individual organisations to understand their impact as well. It's live on Charitable Reuse's website, and we're kind of gathering case studies of how organisations are using that calculator, whether it's to support stakeholder engagement, reporting, or even to support grant applications. And the fabulous thing about the reuse study is that other states are replicating it. Tasmania has just published their results and report, again showing that the reuse sector punches above its weight, and South Australia are in the process of carrying out that report as well. We also have other work underway in the EPA. The reuse and repair strategy is in development, and textiles is one of the 4 focus areas. I won't go into too much detail as Bronwyn Isaacs is presenting on the strategy tomorrow morning, and I encourage you all to go to that presentation. But they are definitely looking at the barriers and opportunities within the reuse and repair sector. Our Carbon Recycling and Abatement Fund was established by the EPA to look at reducing carbon emissions through better waste and materials management, and they have developed a carbon abatement cost curve which estimates the price of abating 1 tonne of carbon and the carbon abatement potential. So within that, in 2022, they identified priority materials of coal ash, tyres, and recycled asphalt pavement, and they're doing the second iteration of the cost curve, looking at the top 10 waste materials streams. And at the moment, I can say that textiles is definitely one of the higher ranking streams. So the next stage is for them to look at the actions that can support reducing the waste in the higher ranking streams. Watch this space. We also have the Resource Recovery Innovation Pathway. The EPA committed to an innovation pathway to support development, demonstration and assessment of new and innovative technology and processes. So textiles is a space that's calling out for innovation in the reprocessing area and also looking at end markets within that. So they've just completed, the team have just completed a consultation around the concept paper and position statement, and have kind of finessed the suite of actions that they want to provide to support and guide projects through the innovation pathway. And as a call out, they are looking for live projects to do some beta testing with and take through the pathway. So please contact me or the New South EPA stand afterwards if you have that kind of technology and project in place. So it's projects that are innovative, it has to be innovative, at the demo, trial and pilot stage and are aligned with the EPA strategic goals. And finally, I wouldn't be able to go past the Product Lifecycle Responsibility Act. It's a fabulous piece of legislation that creates a framework for mandatory product stewardship for any product, first group being batteries, next door, ongoing discussion. And I don't think we can have a textiles discussion without talking about product stewardship schemes and the progress generally across the world to mandatory schemes. Okay, great.
Brilliant. All right, now, Mr. Organiser up the back, I'm trying to log into Slido and it's spinning. Good AI technology, won't connect. Is anyone else having trouble getting into Slido? You're all into Slido? Well, lucky you. All right. I want you to call out the first question. Otherwise, while you're doing that, I'll ask one. Oh, good.
I was wondering what other panels thoughts
Spinning.
on fast fashion? No one actually mentioned that. And what actions can be taken to address this issue?
Thanks, Mandy. Because I'm a big fan of Slido, but oftentimes Anonymous is in the room, and that's not much fun. So what my first take on fast fashion would be is that from a product stewardship perspective, every product entering our market is currently headed for landfill. And what I didn't mention at the outset is that 222,000 tonnes of clothing is heading for Australian landfill every year. So whether it's fast or slow, they all have the same destination right now, which is why seamless is for everyone. So it's easy to hate on fast fashion, but the accountability extends across every single brand placing product in our market. And the way our model works is that 4 cents is attributed to every garment placed on the market, and we've introduced eco-modulation straight off the bat. Because what we know is that garments which are made from single fibres or modern materials are more recoverable and recyclable back into clothing and textiles and maintained at a higher use. So when we do talk about fast fashion, oftentimes those products are made from highly blended synthetics, not always, but sometimes. So our eco-modulation will be rewarding any brand, fast, slow, in between, for starting to introduce better and more recyclable, renewable product into our line. But unfortunately, the reality is we have got a system which is very blended and will be for some time. We are all dormant hoarders. Manette just proved that. So we need a system that covers it all, but there is absolutely no doubt we need to curb the overproduction of poor quality product, because that is not benefiting nature, it's not benefiting people, and it really buggers up the cycle regardless of where you are at. So fast or slow, seamless is for everyone.
Ainsley, I want to do a follow-up while the tech guys are trying to fix Slido. We have 106 EPR schemes in Australia. Only 7 are co-regulatory or mandatory, and 99 of them are voluntary. And those voluntary schemes have an average recovery rate of 4%, ranging from 0.3% to at the best 16%. And of course, seamless is voluntary. How do you see yourself scaling beyond the voluntary companies that you've got, that by definition create a competitive disadvantage for themselves by joining seamless in terms of just their price point? They're adding 4 cents. Admittedly, it's a tiny number, but there are plenty of free riders out there, and we know from experience that those free riders will not join a scheme while they can get away with free riding. How does seamless propose to get beyond that hurdle, which is not about seamless, it's about the structure of voluntary extended producer responsibility schemes? Over to you.
Thanks, Mike. So there are 14 1,000 brands in Australia. And I'm really proud to say that we have got 55 of the most responsible ones on board. And they are all on our website for you to see. But in terms of onboarding 14,000 organisations, it will not be possible without regulation. There is absolutely leadership, but this particular sector is, and fairly, because there hasn't been EPR in Australia for clothing textiles, very compliance-driven. They're not at that point where there is a competitive advantage, although that is coming, particularly those that operate internationally and in the EU in particular. But we are a long way from Kansas, where being committed to more sustainable practices is actually a commitment. So from Seamless's perspective, what we are going to do together is strongly advocate that free riding is actually anti-competitive. And we are going to be starting to use that language with the ACCC, because right now those that are doing the right thing are at a disadvantage, because the 4-cent levy is not yet at a point where it's being passed on to consumers. And that has, in particularly the high volume, low margin players, that has a major impact on their ability to compete in Australia. So that's number one. Number two is I'm going to make good friends with our new Minister, Murray Watt, and actively start encouraging, in fact relentlessly encouraging, for mandatory participation in industry-led schemes for products on the Minister's priority list that have been there for 2 years.
Yep.
Because yes, we've been operational for 10 months and we have achieved a lot in that period of time. But like the Minister said this morning, we have 5 years and we need to be fast, we need to be furious, and we need to be doing this together. The only way that some organisations are going to come on board, and in particular the market leaders, is through that kind of requirement. But at the same time, we're leaning into our values and we are being adaptable, we are being inclusive, and we are being really collaborative. So if it means that we need interim solutions in this transition as we move to regulation, which has been threatened for the clothing industry, then we're open to that feedback, and we actively want those brands on board so that we can provide a system that works for every Australian, so that every Australian has access to an accessible scale, or an accessible, easy to understand, convenient and free system for their clothes. Because some Australians can pay to recycle their clothes, but the majority are not in that position, and I think we all deserve better.
Great answer. I think textiles have been on and off the minister's list for at least a decade now, with federal government saying, I'm going to regulate the textile sector, and then doesn't. So good luck. Hopefully it can grow beyond 16%. Question for Churab, and it was an obvious one. The audience is curious about the recycling. You said something about IP and private equity, and people want to know more about, all your trade secrets. Put it out there. What are you going to do with recycling, and what's this online store that you're thinking about?
Okay, so I've got a background in investment management. My most previous working for Jana Investment Advisors. So they're the biggest investment consultancy firm in Australia. They've got about $1 trillion worth of funds under advice across all the superannuation funds. And I worked in the private equity sector, where I went and visited and did due diligence on private equity managers across the world, and recommended these private equity managers to superannuation funds. So once it gets on Jana's book, then Jana can basically recommend them to the super funds to basically put money with these managers. As part of this exercise, Jana wanted to get a sustainable fund on their books, because impact finance doesn't seem to generate the same yield of return as general private equity or venture capital. And in doing this project for 2 years, I came across a lot of sustainability funds that are out there, and it's a growing trend. So waste management is a big thematic and ESG is a big thematic in the investment world. And when you combine those two things with the Australian superannuation industry, there's a massive opportunity here in Australia. And what this led me towards was basically meeting a lot of family offices, venture capital funds, private equity funds that have a specific focus around sustainable investing. Now, when we looked at what eThread is doing, 250,000 kilos a week is a lot. And there's a breaking point for us. If we are going to be true to being a true closed-the-loop solution in Australia, we need to find another way to try and tackle this waste or opportunity. We've calculated that once we get to 500,000 kilos a week, that's our tipping point. So before we get there, my brother, who's sitting over there, he's the ideas man. He said, "Look, you've got to find a new solution on how to turn textile waste into products." So we embarked on a tour, and we started traveling the world. We went to India, went across to Europe, went to the States, and we just started basically seeing what are other countries doing in this space, and we found a lot of ideas. When we came back here, we started researching universities that are best placed to help us. And a lot of universities have got a lot of great ideas and really smart people. We've managed to partner with Western Sydney University and Deakin. And we're in the process of, we've basically signed NDAs and the like. But all this stuff requires money, investment, and research. So we're in the process of going through CRCP grants and the like and applying for them. But what we were thinking about is there a correlation with waste rising? Australia is a destination of choice. There's going to be a growing population. Waste is only going to increase. But at the same time, housing issues are also going to increase with that. So why can we not sort of pivot towards turning textile waste into construction products? And that's the lens and idea that we've taken. So I hope that sort of gives a bit of insight into what we're looking to do.
Was there an online solution in there somewhere?
Yeah, sorry, so that's the second part of the question. So the online channel is coming on board. Hopefully, we're aiming for like a July deadline. We're basically, we've already got over 18,000 items already put away in our warehouse. We've been working on this for the last 6 months. We're going to launch an online retail store. Basically, it's all secondhand clothing. And to your question earlier about fast fashion, fast fashion's a behavioural thing. What we're trying to do is show everyday Australians that you can buy secondhand clothing, pre-loved clothing, for a very cheap price and great quality. Because we're a blessed nation, what people put in these clothing bins is unbelievable. And that's what we're trying to promote, to change people's behaviours about pre-loved clothing through the online channel.
Just to follow up from me, my daughter's doing fashion design in Melbourne. Spent a lot of time in Melbourne. They are a plethora of secondhand clothing stores in Melbourne. It's just incredible. Every third store in Fitzroy is a secondhand clothing store. We don't have that culture in Sydney at all, even in Newtown. Does anyone want to comment on what brought about that Melbourne secondhand clothing culture, and how do we adopt it, steal it, borrow it?
I have no idea, so.
I can talk to, not specifically Melbourne, but perhaps London is another example where it is actually often generated by the university students and graduates that are coming through and who are innovating and don't have the funds to buy clothing or understand that fast fashion is not the best route to go. So that creativity does actually spring and bring pre-loved clothing more to the forefront. And I think with that, it is about the desirability as well, understanding how can we make pre-loved and second-hand clothing more desirable. The creatives who work currently in the brands and retailers, there are the designers, the marketing teams, gifted creatives in the textile space, gifted communicators who make a lot of people want to buy clothing. That talent needs to shift, even if it's not full-time, at least some of the time, to the pre-loved space to make that, make us feel sexy and confident. And that's often why we buy clothing. So it's shifting that focus.
Yeah.
I just want to add to that quickly, Mike. I think to touch on the where it might start is Monday this week. It is also the first time the Australian Fashion Council has hosted Fashion Week. And on Monday, the Next Guard, so it's our next generation designers out of New South Wales TAFE, profiled 4 of their top innovators. And every single one of them was using dead stock or repurposed fabric. And it was just the most phenomenal opportunity to see that we are starting to see designers wanting to do better. So I think it's coming. We just need to encourage it. But to your point, Mike, it is actually around culture change. And I think the time is now to start normalising reuse and normalising secondary markets. And the time is now because from a cost of living perspective, it does actually warrant you investing in more durable product that can last in your wardrobe for a much longer time. And if you are going to choose a $5 item, why wouldn't you choose something that is made from highly durable product in a secondary market as opposed to a $5 t-shirt which perhaps wasn't ethically made?
Yeah, thank you. Minette, one here I've got to ask. Given the New South Wales WASM has targeted the phasing out of problematic and unnecessary plastics by 2025, open bracket, oops, we're there now, close bracket, has there been discussion on limiting the import/production of polyester and other plastic fibres?
Yeah, I think that is an excellent question, and certainly it's something that needs to be addressed. Imports and actually looking at the upstream supply chains is key to this. Really, we need to go back to the actual design of the garment and have the conversations with the retailers and businesses, and then also look at the import restrictions as well. With seamless, understanding the eco-modulation, and I'm assuming that your levy will go up for garments that have polyester or have a higher environmental impact. So I think there is kind of a double, 2 sides to this. There's definitely work to be done on the import side, work to be done on the design side, and actually a third side, looking at how the levy in the hopefully mandatory down the path stewardship scheme, those 3 elements combine to actually shift the production away from synthetics. But we are definitely not going to meet our target.
Yeah, totally agree. I've got to ask one from Esther Hughes from the MRA team. And it probably goes to you as well, Minette. Will the textile recycling strategy and slow growth be ultimately gazumped by the rise of energy from waste? And to what extent can those 2 processes coexist? So there really is a speed to market issue here, because energy from waste will be with us certainly within a decade. And all the current policy settings say you must have a FOGO bin and a yellow bin. They don't say anything about you must have a textile recycling program. So whatever's in the red bin is going in large part to either, well, it's landfill now, but energy from waste in the future. Is that just a continuing challenge, or is there something else we need to do around the fact that clothing is quite good from an energy from waste perspective in terms of embedded energy.
I think at this stage, really, we do need to explore the recycling and collection options. That is going to be a longer term. How the energy for waste fits into that is something that, again, we need to do some more investigation on. We could look at it an option, but at the moment it is, the focus is on keeping the textiles products out of a residual bin stream and reusing that because we do not have the processing. The energy for waste may come on board, and that is an option that would need to be explored.
Okay. I've got to ask this question because no doubt there's lots of local government in the room. Chirab, one of the continuing griefs that local government has is illegal dumping around bins. Do you want to talk to what are you doing different and why you deserve a second look?
Yeah, it's a great question. So like I said earlier, we looked at all the pain points and illegal dumping was by far one of the biggest ones. Now, you got to think about what is the cause of illegal dumping. A lot of times bin placement is an issue, servicing is an issue, monitoring of that bin is an issue. And when those things are combined, it becomes a typical hotspot for illegal dumping. What we try and do for the first 3 months of putting a bin there is we actually visit that bin every single day. That's our commitment to all our clients. At times, we have to visit the bin twice a day. Now you can imagine the cost of that. We've got a driver, we've got vans, petrols, tolls, all of it adds up. But that's our commitment. That's what we are seeking to do with our clients. If we do that, and we do a good job of that, we've found that illegal dumping actually reduces drastically. The other commitment we make to our clients is that we'll take everything around the bin. Somebody puts a mattress there, furniture, books, their lamps, coffee mugs, cutlery, all sorts of things they put in that bin. They put it around the bin. We take all of it. We'll deal with it. That's our problem. So it's very much our interest to ensure there's no illegal dumping because we're taking care of everything that's around the bin. And we're hoping that there's nothing around the bin because there's only stuff around the bin when the bin is full. So we'll monitor that every single day with our bins for the first 3 months. And the great thing about it is we've developed an app. All our drivers take a photo before and after every single visit. And we can measure the kilos that are coming out of every single bin. So for the first 3 months, generally, we have a really, really good idea whether it's a one-off event of illegal dumping or whether it's a systemic issue. If it's a systemic issue, we literally get rid of the bin. We try and also, bin placement's important, lighting, where it's actually placed. Safety is a big issue for us, it's a big concern for us. We have to make sure that where we put the bins are very safe. And we also try and put them where there's cameras. If there's no cameras, sometimes we're going to install cameras ourselves. We have had occasions where we've put a bin there, we've done everything we can, and you know what? It's popped up a couple of times where it's just become a site where people dump stuff. We've taken the bin out of there on our accord because it's our problem.
Thank you. Probably one to Manette and also Fiona. I think, Fiona, we've had a bit of a discussion about fast fashion. And the question here is, when will we have a durability or repairability index for our garments, or some kind of rating system that allows for ongoing repair and reuse? And it obviously points to the life cycle legislation that the Minister has now introduced. It would be nice if fashion was the next one on the list. But so, Fiona, from your members, would they do it? Are they ready?
I'll be Ainsley for a minute, if that's okay. So from our perspective, what we are introducing...
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
My
I normally
apologies.
respond to anything with an EY, so Ashley, Annie,
Sorry,
not
my
Fiona.
bad.
From our perspective, our members have actually told us through our benchmarking this year that circular design is actually really important to them. So from next week, our brands will be able to register for circular design training, which is actively starting to embed those kinds of principles in the way in which product is designed and placed on the market. There are two courses, one is foundations, the other is implementation, because much like any other kind of asset, even the infrastructure that this room will be really familiar with, designers are just one part of the system, and they have a level of influence, but the ecosystem in which they operate in also needs to be influenced, in the supply chains that they work with. There are some really long lead times. The retailers that we work with right now are already planning for next summer. They aren't thinking about the quarters that are to come. So in terms of a standard, the first step for us is providing the training and the resources so that our responsible brands can choose better. But over the coming months, 2 years, we will have a standard, and that will feed into our eco-modulation, and that will reward those organisations that are doing better. Our levy was always meant to evolve, and over time, the differential between the levy and the discounted eco-modulation will make it so that it will be more rewarding to be doing better practice all the time.
Does everyone know what eco-modulation means? It's a funky word for you pay more if your product is crap and can't be recycled, and you pay less if it's got high recycled content and can be readily recycled. That's just a...
So for seamless, our levy at the moment is 4 cents for every new garment placed on the market, and our eco-modulation, our incentive is 25% discount on that, so 3 cents for each garment placed on the market. Now, if you're a small brand, that's not a huge dollar value differential, but if you are placing millions or billions of items on the market, it is substantial, and the C-suite have taken notice.
We have Tony Chappell in the audience, so I'm going to be very interested in what the EPA says about adding textiles to an EPR lifecycle program.
Just a little bit more about design standards. So as Ainsley talked about, that the designers themselves are actually just a very small part of the machine of textile and clothing production. And actually, we also need to look further back upstream to the facilities that are making the garments and the fabrics, and also the accessories as well. They have spent the last 20 years plus looking at their manufacturing and production standards to make them as efficient and keep them, for instance, a seam margin. If you have a bigger allowance, it can allow for alteration. But actually, the textile production on a commercial level is about narrowing that seam allowance as much as possible. So therefore, it actually takes away the repairability and the alterability of the garment. So it's looking at the designers, but also going further back into the production and manufacturing. And actually, more important than designers are the CFOs of these companies, because they control the money. They decide effectively what materials you're using, your library of materials, your library of accessories, the seam allowances. That all comes back down to the margins. So the designers, yes, they have that creative control and can definitely improve their minimum design standards, but actually it's the CFOs of the companies. And as CFOs, if there's any CFOs or CEOs here, I would encourage you to speak to your equivalents in the retail world and talk about the waste that you're receiving, and also the investment community as well, because there are definitely parts of the investment community that are very open to sustainable, and actually there's more reporting and financial disclosures being required all the time from the investment community. And there are tick the box parts of the investment community, but there are also parts of the investment community that are very invested in the ESG. And I have been on trips overseas with members of the investment community who are really interested in understanding what happens in supply chains. But I think anyone here needs to be having conversations with the upstream businesses, because you are the ones receiving, their products. So it's those conversations that need to be had.
Right of reply. You said earlier that 97% of clothing is imported. Your ability as the New South Wales government to influence the import design, the design arrangements upstream is tantamount to zero. So isn't the best you can do to say if it's retailed or sold or wholesaled in New South Wales, you must put some cash in a bucket, which we can then use to recycle your bad product, and you pay more if it's a crap product and you pay less if it's good. You can't really, in reality, influence designers in India or wherever, the rest of the world. You just don't have that authority. So isn't the practical way forward to add it to the product life cycle scheme and just whack a price on it?
Yeah, that's definitely the main route, but also many of the companies are headquartered also in Australia and in Sydney, and where you can have influence is have those conversations.
I think there's another opportunity for government and potentially 50% of the population, because I see a fair amount of branded merch in the room, but that's uniforms. And while it's not the entire apparel sector, government do have a significant procurement spend that is headed towards workwear and requiring certain kinds of better, durable, more recyclable, more renewable product is something that is absolutely within your control. And if you send a really strong, consistent demand signal through your procurement practices, producers will change because they understand that that is the kind of product that you want in the future. But if it's not in specifications, and I know this to be true through infrastructure, when it is specified, it is so.
Back to, someone like that.
Sorry, Mike, can I just add
please.
to that? That work has already started. The Circular Markets team in DQ have published an environmentally sustainable procurement guide. Textiles is one of their priority materials, and they are looking at future training as well in terms of sustainable procurement. And also with Seamless's uniform working group, I'm quite keen to have a government representation on there to really drive greater understanding of how we can achieve a more sustainable government procurement for textiles.
All right. I want to revert back to Fiona this time, because she's been very quiet up the end. There have been a couple of questions about, can you explain the relationship between yourself and eThread, and how do we grow that? How do more people support Sebastian Foundation via that kind of partnering alliance program?
With different partnering alliance, or I guess with the arrangement with eThread is that, as we mentioned before, from every single clothing bin out there and all of the collection services, the sales of rags, portion financial donations come directly to the Sebastian Foundation, which we then directly invest in local schools in that particular area to do the Open Parachute program. Everyone can get involved in certain ways in that particular program by donating clothes more to eThread's work, or monetary donations to the work that we do, or corporates to get involved. I think local council, and in particular to go by Campbelltown councils and other councils' examples and look at this kind of program at a local council level to consolidate the bin collection services through one supplier that they know that is ethical and that is investing in their local community for the social causes, I think is the biggest way and the biggest impact we can have to support that further, I think.
In the interest of time, I'm going to ask the panel you've got a magic wand. You can initiate one action, one policy, one regulatory reform, whatever you like, at any level. Starting with you, Manette.
I think it'd be remiss of me if I didn't support a mandatory product stewardship scheme. I think that will be a driver, and then we also need to set the boundaries by looking at the imports and at the exports to drive, and that setting the boundaries will hopefully drive change.
If I was a minister,
Yep.
I would thank Minister Penny Sharp and take the Product Lifecycle Act and roll it out everywhere
Yeah.
for every product that's currently on the priority list.
Yeah, whack-a-mole. That's my
Whack-a-mole.
new strategy.
Can I have two?
Yeah. Janice.
Okay, so one, I'd try and change policy to try and make recyclable material a certain percentage of consumables that we have. So for example, if there's an acoustic panel that needs to be made, it would be lovely if government could support suppliers of acoustic panels that have, say, 20 or 30% of their product that comes from a recycled material. That would, in effect, have an end market that innovators would be able to then innovate and sell into. Second thing is to basically try and have a mandate for textiles in particular that actually filters down to local council level. A lot of times I'm the guy that's filling out those tenders for local councils, and I just feel like when I'm filling these things out and having the discussions with councils themselves don't actually know exactly what they're trying to achieve. A couple of times I filled out tenders, they've come back to me and said, look, we've pulled that tender off the board because you've actually given us room to think broader than how we initially wrote this tender. So if there was more sort of clear guidance that comes down to local council level in terms of mandates of what they want to achieve, particularly around textile waste, which is between 5 to 20% of waste that goes to landfill in certain councils, then that would help them, if that makes sense.
I think that covers the mandate side of things would have been what I'd said on the waste side, so I think I'll go on a completely different level on the community impact support side. I think what we're doing here with eThread, we're taking it upon ourselves in partnership to provide this benefit to schools, and the schools are crying out for that funding. So many of the schools desperately need this program, but their funding is so tight and they literally cannot do it themselves. So I think a call out to the government to even match that funding so we can continue to keep that momentum going in the schools that we've started to fund, and then frees up our fundraising to reach new schools would be a great thing. I think what we discovered was that in New South Wales, private schools have been receiving more government funding per student than the public school down the road, which just seems absolutely crazy. So I've got nothing against private schools, but it just seems insane that independent schools have received more government funding than government schools. So even if that could be freed up to then support programs like this, I'd love to see that.
Oh,
Just
3
to add-
points.
Yeah,
Oh,
just sorry.
now you're just being greedy.
Yeah, just to add to that, because a lot of people might be wondering about transparency of dollars going to the Sebastian Foundation from eThread, and we're very open about that. It's basically, it's $500 for every bin goes to the Sebastian Foundation on average, which actually ends up supporting 33 students going through the program. So in terms of, those who are thinking, oh, what's the dollar impact? That's what it is.
So Fiona, if we all support eThread and the Sebastian Foundation, could you get to come and do a concert here at the next year's event, and we'll all contribute extra? Thank you. In wrapping up, I've got to mention the sponsors. They're up there in the bottom right-hand corner, so I don't have to read them out. And would you please join with me in thanking our excellent panel? It's been great.